Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Out of the Fog, the Trauma Network. Tonight we have the very lovely Jessie Moss joining us. Just before we start, Jessie, I'll just read out, just for any viewers, that obviously, if at any time you do feel triggered, because this is a trauma show, then I do absolutely recommend that you speak to someone that you trust or turn to someone that you trust. Also, we do have Beyond, just a couple of hotlines here that you can also call and turn to. So we have Beyond Blue, which is 1300 867 888, and the abuse hotline, which is 1-800-RESPECT, just so that it makes it really easy for you to remember. So that's 1-800-737-732. And of course, if you are international, then because you could get a couple of international viewers on here, then I do recommend that you seek someone local that you could probably speak to. Alternatively, I'm sure that Jessie and myself would be more than happy to help if you needed to reach out. And at the end of this, we will have Jessie's contact details in the comments after this live, if that's okay with you, Jessie.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We will begin by just tell the viewers and myself a little bit about yourself.
I'm Jessie Moss. I reside on the sunny coast here in Queensland, and I work as an intuitive. So, what stems underneath that is many different things, but mostly I work in change and transition. So, I do have a background in body work, and so many years of that, I discovered that there was more to what was being stored in the body. And so I work a lot with mind body connection, finding what's stored in the body. So I use my intuition to, I guess, pull out what people need to work on in the moment that they're ready to work on. So I work a lot with the nervous system. And yeah, I wrote a book recently as well. So everything change and transition. I kind of walk people through that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I mean, for myself personally, I've met Jessie and I've done some work with Jessie, and I have to say that very much so, very in tune with who she is as a person, but also very deeply connected. And so, what I really wanted to do within this is let's delve into what was life like growing up for you, Jessie?
Hmm. For me, as a kid growing up, I was a little bit different to the others. I was,
Mm,
weird. Like I liked just to wear whatever I felt like wearing. I didn't dress like the typical girl. I was quite a tomboy. I was a high achiever. I was in a house that just never knew how to communicate. I guess they did the best that they could. Um, but there was like this hypervigilance that I discovered in my childhood. So always seeking out like achieving a lot and trying really hard and putting lots of blame on myself to try and fit in, I suppose, and try and find my find my place and where I belonged. And it was a very long time until I even found that. And yeah, I guess I've always searched. I've been like a truth seeker from the get go.
mm.
I knew I could see things not from this realm when I was a small child as well, which was
Wow.
terrifying. But I learned to kind of, I guess, hone those gifts over time in my teenage years more so.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's very interesting. Do you think that the atmosphere around you maybe made you someone who was more intuitive or more in tune to yourself and your surroundings?
Totally, yeah. It's it's pretty common when you grow up having to navigate around dysfunction and behaviors that aren't so healthy. It
Mm,
is a natural thing to develop. Some of us do. I think there's a scale in which way we go, either into more people pleasing tendencies or into more aggressive tendencies. And
yeah.
I never really fought. I just kind of learnt to please and take a back seat and suppress, which meant that I felt everyone in the room, and I developed these tendencies through my hypervigilance where I can still now walk in a room and feel everything.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can completely connect with that 100%.
Yeah.
Um, do you mind if I ask you, and obviously, as we know, right, we've been through this in the introduction email, that at any time, if you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to answer something, then we'll just divert from that. But do you mind if I ask if there was any sort of confrontation growing up or violence, if there were things that made you quite vulnerable in some sort of way?
Yeah, yeah. I think every household has their own version of that. And
Mm,
for me, it wasn't so much outward aggression. It was more one parent being really passive and stonewalling and no communication, but not being able to even know probably what they were feeling or how to communicate it
yeah.
themselves. And so it kind of um, gives off to to me anyway. It gave off to me a sense of not being wanted, not being chosen, and that
Mm,
dysfunction carried out because then the other parent would try and have the voice heard, and then it would create this explosion from one and then
mm,
quietness to the other, and yeah, just like this almost sometimes having to choose, which put pressure and responsibility on me as a kid. So even though it wasn't so much a loud, aggressive, angry kind of house, there was all
mm.
this other stuff, which I think sometimes can make it harder to navigate because it's not so much in your face.
Absolutely.
It took me a long time to realize that that wasn't even healthy. So for me, the normal thing for me was to suppress, to not, it's not even to cry. So that, that's not
Mm.
allowed. Don't show your emotions. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's very interesting because for myself, listening to you, I get the feeling that growing up, it must have been you, and you must have been in this place where you had to play a lot of a guessing game. How is, like you're sort of, saying now, is how is, mum or dad feeling, or how can I navigate this? And I think that when we have very little expression, it really puts us in this place of closing off to vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
in ways. And so I find this very beautiful because I know that you are actually someone who really delves really deep. So we're going to get into that later to see how you actually followed that path. But it's quite amazing how
Yeah.
in trauma, and I think you and I hold these same beliefs, that you are definitely presented with choices throughout life. And it's about how you want to nurture, grow, and change those intergenerational traumas um, to evolve per se, right? So let's talk about, okay, so you've grown up in something where, in a household which seemed to be quite closed,
Mm-hmm.
and that in itself has a lot of challenges. So what did life look like for you getting into teenagehood, adulthood? Do you recognize any of those little repeating patterns that led you to what we're going to speak about later, which was quite traumatic? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The theme of not being worthy, not being good enough, not being heard, not being seen, all those common ones, but a very, very deep core belief of it not being safe because
Mm,
there was no expression, so there was no boundaries. And so I wasn't a
yeah.
person that knew what boundaries were. And that gave me, I didn't know at the time, obviously, but it gave me a sense of not being safe. And so I actually got myself into a lot of situations in my teen years that it wasn't safe. So I must have kind of been creating, feeding that pattern.
Mm,
That it's not safe to be in the world. And I became angry as well. I experienced a lot of
mm,
loss in my adolescence. And yeah, it bring for me a sense of anger, a sense of resentment, rebellion. Like I just, I would already start drinking, going to parties in high school. I feel like there was a sense of me not really caring about myself. So that was a severe lack of self-worth, and that even girls in high school would, I remember at the very start of high school, they wouldn't want to be my friend because of how I looked, or I remember things like that, but I didn't understand, and I always just stayed
Yeah.
true to myself. I always had that in me, but to kind of, it felt like at the cost of safety almost as well, like
Yes.
having a tribe and belonging somewhere. So I was quite gifted with creativity. So I would
Mm.
go, I taught myself, my brother helped me to learn the guitar at 11. So I would just take myself
Mm.
away and play music and draw and like express myself through other ways because I could never use my voice.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, when you say, I think that there is this pattern of behavior that I see a lot, even in myself and others, where we tend to do this thing of risk taking. You know how you said you didn't have sort of like that self care or that self love,
Mm-hmm.
feeling unsafe, and so we adopt this pattern because not feeling safe becomes familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we tend to chase the things that are unsafe. So, if you don't mind just sharing with us how these moments led you to a place. Now, I know a little bit about your story. Obviously, our viewers don't. So, we're going
Mm-hmm.
to treat it as something that is brand new. So, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't mind just sharing how these patterns led you to a place of complete being really unsafe and something that really changed the trajectory of your life per se.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So coming kind of out of my teenage years, I obviously, left home as soon as I could. I knew I didn't want to, I was lonely. I was really lonely as well. So I remember leaving as soon as high school finished and just kind of like was homeless for a bit. Had my school backpack full of clothes. And I just got on a train
Mm.
and left. And it was interesting because like that's really unsafe, but I
Yeah.
was fine. I was
So,
fine to do that.
do you mind, Jessie? Sorry if I just interject here and just ask,
Yeah.
what made you leave? Was it feelings of being understood? When you look more deeply into that, what do you think made you want to go off and per se explore?
I was searching for belonging. I didn't feel like
Mm.
I belonged, and I had disconnected from the family, although I love them and
Yeah.
I can speak to them. They're my family. I love them dearly, but yeah, I didn't realize, but I'd checked out. I was disconnected by then, and having lots of arguments with my dad, using my
Mm.
voice, but it not ever being heard. So I think I
Mm.
just, I always had that in me. I'd had enough, and I took off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I guess
yeah.
so. Sorry, carry on. I just wanted to. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that kind of lifestyle, I didn't end up going to uni. I kind of sabotaged my way through the next few years. By the time I was 19, I had my first child, and then so there's a pattern of surviving in the world, being alone, all the things reiterated through that whole
Mm.
experience of seeing all my friends go to uni and just sacrificing and not really knowing what I was doing, but then having this child to fend for as well as myself.
Wow.
So that was kind of a bit of an awakening, but then it also made me feel no one's going to want me. I've got a child, I'm kind of, abandoned again, all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up, when he was one, I ended up in a relationship for the next almost 10 years after that. And that relationship was extremely toxic. So I went through domestic
Mm.
violence up until the age of 29.
Wow. Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing a little bit of your experience in that, Jessie? I know that you've done a lot of healing, so I believe that you're
Yeah.
okay to share it. Share something, yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So everyone's story is really unique with this,
Mm.
and it took me 3 or 4 years because I was one. I was used to chaos. I was used to the dysfunction.
Yes.
I was used to not speaking up. I was used to self sabotaging. I was used to
Yeah.
knowing my worth. And so I was primed for the picking, really. And I played it out because I had a need of needing to be the fixer. So I needed someone that I could try and fix, but obviously that I couldn't. And so as that kind of played out, it took me 3 or 4 years to really understand that I was in something that was, going to the next level of violence, and something that wasn't safe to stay in. And I was secretly taking myself to counseling to learn to communicate, because I knew something was wrong. But because I was in that hypervigilant state, I would always blame myself. What's wrong with me? And because my partner would always tell me it was my fault, obviously.
Yes.
I believed it. I believed it for like 3 or 4 years, and I couldn't tell, because it was very honeymoony. It was very, I was on a pedestal. So it took a long time, and I was young, but it took a long time for me to realize, because it was so normal. It felt probably comfortable in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I myself can relate to that, and I know other stories that come into play here. And it's amazing how you are definitely a fixer when you're preordained to this type of lifestyle from very young, and wanting to fit in and wanting to belong and be loved and be a protector. And it's funny how that really follows a pattern of huge empathy, I think, that comes from these different scenarios that we go through growing up. And there are these links between being in a place where you need to understand adults from very young, because you need to make sense of things, to then becoming this protective person to what we choose to be in our life until we become awakened. And I know that you do a lot of awakening facilitation, and it's just so perfect. But and so when we talk about the abuse, I really want our viewers to know that abuse comes in very many different forms. You have mental coercion, you have, as you say, reminding you of the things that you're not good at. Do you mind if I ask? I know that you have mentioned domestic violence. Can I ask to what extent domestic violence got to within your relationship, and what were the signs before it actually started to get to that point?
Yeah, I the signs when it was getting to that point was when I was taking myself to therapy and realizing, learning to communicate. Then I was, and then the thing that was my problem was no longer there. So then it kind of, I was catching on to it and speaking up, and that's when it got worse and worse and worse. But for me, it was more just that coercive, controlling behavior. Isolating, so we'd move towns all the time. As soon as something went wrong, we'd move towns again.
Wow.
And like finances, it got physical. There's mostly emotional, just chipping away, rewiring me, manipulating me into just complete states of confusion.
Yeah. And it's very interesting, and it's really phenomenal actually, when you're in a place like this for an amount of time, how this becomes so normal that you start to believe it, right? I had someone quite close to me a little while ago say to me, and obviously they're in a place of wanting to know more and questioning, and this is partially what this is about. The trauma network is also to put out for the people that maybe are not aware. And this person said to me, they said, but the thing is though, if someone is abusive, why not leave? And my response was, yes, okay, so as an outlooker, as someone who's on the third party stance and looking inwards, I can completely see that reasoning. But for us who have been in these scenarios, when we are so used to that type of pattern of behavior, of fixing, of belonging, of wanting to make it right, and then when we have someone who over time manipulates the mind so much for us to actually start to believe that we
Mm-hmm.
are the problem, that we are not good enough, that we are deserving of this. It's quite amazing how that becomes so normal that we are in a place of just wanting to fix and become better and please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
this is the thing with domestic violence. You can't tell someone to leave and get out until, and because
Hmm.
they won't hear it. They won't hear it until
Yes.
it's time. And, you protect them, you fiercely protect them because of what they're saying to you.
Mm.
Yeah, it's highly confusing. And I just, yeah, I feel when you don't have the tools, some people have the tools, maybe they're a bit more secure in themselves or in their family. They have support. Like I severely lack support around me as
Mm.
well. So it was just me with my child. And then, yeah, it, it was normal. Those things were
Mm.
normal. And plus, I was having my needs met unconsciously of
Yes.
having a place, fitting in, being the fixer, all the things I did as a kid. I was able to do them. So
Mm.
unconsciously, I needed that. That was a need of mine, which obviously that had to change for me to get out.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's funny how isolated and being isolated really stands out for me here,
Mm,
because I see that when you say, moving towns. And so on one hand, you have this isolation. On the other hand, you're being a giver or a fixer, right? So you have this pattern that is repeating onwardly. And I mean, 10 years, Jessie, 10 years is a fair amount of time
mm,
to, continue, and even to have to be in counseling privately. That's something that also really, really stands out to me. Now, I know that you have two beautiful children.
hmm
um, so tell me, within that time, if you don't mind sharing, so within that time, and you're seeing a counselor, how did you start to make sense of what was actually going on for you?
mm. What my big catalyst was, my eldest turned 7, and I've got 5 years gap between my two. And he turned around 7. He got really rebellious, and he would actually stand up against the behavior, which then caused more and more fights to break out because then I'd have to stand up for him. So
Mm.
when it was just me, I didn't obviously see it. I saw a problem with it. I didn't enjoy it, but I was stuck. I was really stuck. But then when it was happening, and my oldest child was standing up to it, it really opened my eyes. I knew that I couldn't do it much longer. But then it still took me 2 years to get out after that. And
No.
I tried.
Yeah.
I tried multiple times to leave,
Mm.
and it would just make it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that fighting, where do you think your inner strength came from, um, in these moments? I mean, that is like desperation, right? When you know that you need to leave something,
Yeah.
and you are basically, now I know that for some, there is going to be the mindset of, well, if you want to leave, you should just leave. And it's been said to me before. There are a whole lot of things that come into play here, though, aren't there,
hmm
Jessie?
Yeah.
So you have children involved, you have your living circumstances. By this time, I'm sure 10 years, you're sort of sharing finances. Um,
Yeah.
when we're talking about control, that comes into a lot of things as well. And so, I don't know the depth of control, but for me, it sounds very controlling if you're moving towns and you have to see
Yeah.
someone in the quiet.
Yeah. And I can't, you can't tell anyone. So you can't just
Yes.
call a friend and say, oh, I need, because I had a really big fear of failure and judgment.
Mm.
And so if that failed and I wasn't with, then I'd lost another family. I'm
Yeah.
a failure, and I didn't want to do that. So I think that's another reason why I hung in there. But then it was also the isolation and just not having anywhere to go, not
Mm.
knowing who to turn to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are factors that they keep you in this repeating cycle. And so it's kind of like you're in I suppose, a jail cell in a form. and that claustrophobia of something, like taking over.
Mm.
What were your moves like within that time? Who did you turn to? What were the things that you had to try and do to, I suppose, support yourself and your child? Sorry, Jessie, did you have
Yeah,
your second son by this
with
time?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at 25, I had 25. I was pregnant with my second, and
Okay.
what happened was because I was so isolated, I knew I needed something because I was getting really bad headaches. I had health problems, like one after the other. I would have
Mm,
to work a lot of jobs when he decided to not work, and um, I'd still have to do daycare and things like that, even though he was home. Like it was very strange, but looking back, and
wow.
but I didn't
Huh.
mind because it was like that's what I've always done. So
Mm,
I'll over support and burn myself out. So eventually, I found I was into massage, I was into alternative things from early 20s. So I'm really blessed that I had that because all my intuitive
yeah.
gifts I completely shut off. I wasn't allowed to be like that with him. It
Mm,
was, it was all a load of shit. So I
yes.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
hid it away and people pleased and forgot myself. And so I would have these wild dreams and things just started happening to me and health issues. And so I joined this local gym and met a whole bunch of these awesome women up north. And I started boxing and running and getting
Wow.
strong, not knowing what I was doing at the time. And,
Yes. Yeah.
just quietly going in, doing my thing. But looking back, I was physically getting strong,
Mm.
um, preparing myself to leave. Yeah.
What did leaving for you look like?
One major thing that stands out is a friend of mine said to me, it because the behavior was spilling out at barbecues with friends. People would notice a bruise on my arm, or just the way he was speaking to me got a bit more intense, a bit more
Mm,
sharp, a bit, and then I wasn't showing up places. Sometimes I was rebelling a bit. So people were noticing, and then some were saying to me, especially this friend, she said, I don't want to see your face on the news. Like you'll be one of those
mm,
people and I won't know where you've gone or something happened to you. And it hit me different, but I
wow.
was ready. I was ready to hear things like that. And
Mm,
then I had another friend come and stay, and they said, I'm not going until you get out. And
yeah.
I rang my mom straight away, which I never did. I never asked for help. And I just said, I need help. You need to come and help me. And she was
Mm,
like straight on a plane because she was like, Jessie, never ask.
yes.
I need to go. And I literally found a home in like a little unit in 2 weeks and moved out. And but
Mm,
that's when it got worse for me. It got worse for the next 18 months. Yeah.
okay. Do you mind telling me a bit more about that?
Yeah. So he ended up, typical kind of, not typical, but up north, it was happening a lot. There were people, lots of marriages breaking up, lots
Mm,
of drugs and things like that. So
mm,
he kind of went down that path. And I think that contributed to the escalating behavior.
yeah.
So I had to lie to leave. I had to say, give me 6 months and I'll think about coming back. And so I had to
Yes.
kind of plan my way out. And at the time, honestly, like maybe I would have gone back.
Mm,
I don't know. But then the behavior just got very out of control. My house would be broken into.
wow.
The police were called all the time. The police were trying to get me to put a protection order on, but I felt bad for him, so I didn't. And
Mm,
then, about 6 months after that, I went to court and got one myself because it didn't stop. It
wow.
didn't stop. Like my child would be picked up from school, my eldest one, that's not his, and he
Oh
would say,
God.
give me my child and I'll give you yours. And that was like a weekly occurrence, just weird things like that, being stalked, um, harassed in public, in my workplace, causing a scene, calling me all the
Yeah.
names under the sun. Yeah, it went on for 18 months like that. Yeah. And then
Wow,
I
Jessie.
and then I just packed up and I left. I moved here to the Sunshine Coast in 2016.
My goodness. You know, that life of living in that complete hypervigilance, and it's funny, not funny, haha, obviously, but it's when you look at life from when you're young, living in hypervigilance,
Mm,
and then going through life in hypervigilance,
mm,
and what it does to the nervous system, and your sympathetic nervous system, because we don't really experience the side of parasympathetic
mm,
until I think we actually start to learn about that. But I can only, well, no, I can imagine because I do understand from my own experiences, except I never had any children. And being a mum and being so protective, and then having so you're forever looking over your shoulder,
mm-hmm.
you're having your home broken into, you're then trying to find a way to protect your young people, and your loved ones. So within this time, you must have been absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that I was.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just in constantly in fight.
yeah,
Like I was waiting, or I guess there'd be some freeze moments sometimes. But
mm,
my coping mechanism was alcohol, so I drank a
yes,
lot. I drank a lot, and I wasn't being able to be present because of what was happening. Um, and obviously, that time going through court and things like that, I
mm,
didn't take anything when I left the marriage. I took no money. I didn't ask for anything. Um,
um,
I just wanted to get out, and so then after that, going through court for as long as what we did after that, I was financially ruined, and that whole family basically turned on me as well. So they were kind of, after that amount of time, they're people that you think you love and trust,
yeah,
and yeah, they turn on you too. So a lot of people, like even mutual friends of the marriage, just all thought that he told everyone I had cheated, and that's why he left me.
wow,
And so yeah, I was again isolated and
yes.
left on my own to fend for all of this. Yeah, yeah.
So you're now suffering with, and I don't know if you had already suffered from alcohol abuse, but obviously this was something that was really prominent for you in numbing and
Mm-hmm.
coping and trying to just get through. So you have an alcohol addiction, if we could call it that. You're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
You're running on a nervous system which is completely tied out and completely screwed.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to look after your children. You now are in a place where, let's be honest, your vulnerabilities are even more so in a place of no trust, because the people whom are meant to be there, if we could
Mm-hmm.
say that,
Yeah.
um, have now turned their backs on you. You're going through court cases. Jessie, what did you do? Like, from here,
Mm-hmm.
where do you go and how do you get yourself to a place of more nurturing and starting to awaken? And I really want to use that because I know that you're very passionate about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. First, I had no choice. I
Mm,
totally burnt out. I didn't know how to even self care. Um, I realized I wasn't present with my kids. um, I did have the gym. That was my outlet. So I had the
yeah.
people. I worked at that gym. I ended up becoming That's how I got into fitness and teaching
Mm,
Pilates and things like that. Um, and I would run a lot. So I had my things. The interesting thing is, I didn't drink any alcohol for a long time when my kids were
mm,
little, and in the relationship, I was sober because I needed to be. on my game.
Yes.
And so it was interesting that I went to alcohol after. So yeah, it's strange how that happens, but I needed something. And then eventually I got away here. Then I still had to go to court back there. Basically ran out of money, and so I needed to represent myself as well as, work a couple of jobs, start fresh in a new town. I was followed here as well. Just many things going down, and I realize I'm done. Like I'm finished here. I can't do this anymore. And I had so many of those moments, but I had a really big one, and just thought to myself, I want out of this, and maybe I just give him what he wants, because it seems that he wants my youngest. So maybe I contemplated that. Maybe I just give him away and it stops. I was so desperate. Obviously, it wasn't a very long pondering, and I didn't do it.
Yes.
But it was that bad that went through my head. So I did have a partner at this time. I had repartnered, and he was really good for me at that time. And he said to me, you need to find some space and care for yourself. Like, I ended up in hospital a few times, and so my body completely shutting down, chronic pain, like so many things happening. I'm going to the psychologist. They're saying, you have CPTSD.
Yes.
You need to start managing this. I couldn't stop drinking. I was trying, but I couldn't. There were so many things wrong. But I was healthy. Like, I thought I was healthy. I was still going to the gym and fitting all the things in, and just really strong in my mind. But I didn't want to feel what was in my body. And so I ended up going down to the beach for 10 minutes here and there. It started with that. And then eventually I went to yoga, and I always hated yoga because it was
really?
It was so uncomfortable for my body, because my body was so tight, and I didn't want to look at what was going on for me. I didn't want to breathe deep. I didn't like it. So I just went one time and kind of, had a collapse in the class and just felt everything. And a few weeks later, I went to Bali and took a month away from everyone and everything, and went by myself and studied yoga for a month. And that's really when it started to turn around for me. I started to realize about the nervous system, and started to, call a bit of my power back then. Because a lot of people judged me for going away for a month, which is so ridiculous and very not supportive. But I had a lot of judgment on me all the time.
What I love about listening to you here is that you are in a place where your mind is so strong, and you are continuing to persevere. And it's quite, the way that you touched on not being used to alcohol, not doing the alcohol thing in the relationship, and then coming out of it and starting to do the alcohol, right? And I really, really believe that there is this place in ourselves where for a while we can't. Have you ever felt that feeling before, Jessie, where you think to yourself, okay, if I actually feel this in this moment, I might break and I might not come back from this? Yeah, that absolute level of desperation. I do honestly believe that this is when we turn to the things that are more easily accessible to try and numb that pain. So for our viewers, this is something that is very normal. And, for the people ourselves who have been through things like this, we understand. And there should be no shame associated with that, because at that moment, it's something that did help you get through. Now, it's not something that I recommend, or I'm sure Jessie would recommend, but, it's like a short-term medicine, because that's what it is until you're able to start to cope and go more deep. Now, Jessie, I know that the things that you did after this in your journey to healing, you've done some intense things. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that with us? And I say intense because I know that it was traveling very deeply into yourself and who you were, and
Mm,
finding that strength that has brought you out onto the other side. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I just learnt to sit with it. I did EMDR and internal family systems. Both those therapies I still do today. Every month I still go, whether I feel good or not. Um, I'm always going as maintenance because
Mm.
I have had so many triggers. And it's good for my work as well to have supervision around things at least once a month. And if I need more,
Mm.
I'll go more. So I still
Mm.
access that. And it's like 9 years I've been out now. Like I'm almost 38.
Mm.
So um, when I started there, I knew all the cognitive therapy, all the, harsh mindset, all these goals.
Mm.
I was really into personal training. So I would just be at the gym. I'd be, picky with myself, living off goals. And then the yoga was what really dropped me into my body. And then I softened a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a
I
little
was
bit.
leading into
Yeah,
this. Yes. Yeah.
tiny bits at a
Perfect.
time. And because
Yeah.
it's my nervous system couldn't, if I felt it all at once, I don't know, I would go into freeze because I did have moments when I would, and then I couldn't get out of bed because
Mm.
it was just too much. And so yoga was the thing. If I was moving my body, noticing, breathing, and that's why I became a yoga teacher, because
Yeah.
it's one of the things that really saved my life and
Mm.
gave me life. So I live my yoga. And then obviously I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, this is as far as I can go with my mind. I sat in Vipassana. I did meditation. I did all the things, and then I wanted to really start peeling back and sitting and really facing my shadows. And so I did the thing that scared me the most. I went to the Amazon jungle in Peru, where
Wow.
I met some Shipibo people at this beautiful temple. It was a very authentic, safe facilitators, and obviously it's illegal here. But I went over
Mm.
there and did plant medicines. I did 10 days at the temple, and then I
Wow.
travelled for a few weeks after that. And so I faced kind of shadows and my
Yeah.
demons in some very strange realms, and it really opened up me the knowing that I am multidimensional, that my
Mm.
gifts definitely expanded while I was there. It changed my brain. It was the thing that got me to stop drinking. I hadn't touched
Wow.
alcohol for 2 years after getting back from there. I tried to
Mm.
drink one time and I felt poisoned and I was sick for 3 weeks. So
That's
I literally
amazing.
couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I
Kind of
know
the
that it's. Sorry. Carry on.
No, that was kind of the start of the digging deep, I suppose. I dug deep for years after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Mm,
And it's quite amazing, I think, until you're actually able to see the darkness of an addiction. Um, it's only really the time that you understand what it does do to your body. Um, but you know what I find uh, really insightful, and something that I really admire you for, Jessie, is how, so if we just link back to how you grew up in having to play this guessing game perhaps of how people were feeling, etc., and yet how at the same time you have befriended silence and
mm,
befriended peacefulness, and this place of not having to talk too much into
mhm,
how you can sit with something.
mhm,
And I think that it's very important. You know, we treat trauma as an enemy, and I honestly believe that if we started to treat trauma as our friend, as something that has allowed, somehow it shapes us if we so choose that,
Mm.
right? Um, but I know that we've got about 15 minutes left. So do you mind if we talk about, and I really love these shares, but do you mind if we talk about what life looks like for you now? Some of the things that you do now that you continue to do in helping your healing journey,
Mm-hmm.
and what what is your medicine to the world? What do you think all of this stuff that has happened has shaped you to bring this magic
Mm-hmm.
through? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, well, I know what it takes. I know I've got a lot of resilience, and I've built it from nothing at times.
Mm,
So resilience is a massive thing that I
yeah.
that I teach and I can share, and that's felt when I know people feel it when they're around me.
Mm,
Truth and expression, suppressing anything in our bodies is really unhealthy.
yeah.
So I just won't do that anymore. I really value healthy connection, vulnerability. So all the things that I was never able to do, but actually gave me the gifts to do it at a level where perhaps I wouldn't have if that wasn't how it was for me when I was young. I
Mm,
get to say my truth now. I get to experience my growth when I need to. And I'm a person that I don't want to stop growing. And so I need
yeah.
people around me that want to grow with me.
Mm,
So I have the courage to say goodbye to who and what, and to
mm,
really align myself and move through change and transition, and be in the unknown, in that
mm,
little void space on the in between. That's where I love working. That's where I feel like I can thrive in there, although it's
yeah.
very uncomfortable. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah,
yeah,
and you are very much someone I think, and you're very deep. You don't just go on the shallows. You go deeper than that, and
yeah.
it's very admirable. And you speak about resilience. So what are some of the practices that you continue to do in building resilience? I know that you, as you say, facing fears and delving deeper, but do you mind
Mm-hmm.
just explaining a little bit about the things that you believe have helped in your healing, helped in you building resilience,
Mm-hmm.
and what you really encourage others who might be going through the same thing to do to help themselves?
Yeah. For yeah, to as I'm feeling into resilience, it's like I work a lot with energy. Obviously, I can feel
Mm,
everything in someone. And so this is why people like have these sessions with me. I can um, kind of see that we all have choice and bring
mm,
people back to that remembering. So resilience is about being in that really sticky place and being able to have curiosity rather than going into the story, which internal family systems helps me to do that. Because if you think of all of our parts, these parts are the younger versions of ourselves, which is us. And maybe, let's say, a part of me feels abandoned and I don't want to look at it, so then I'm abandoning that part of myself, which is then creating the trigger or the hook to whatever the situation is. So
mm,
this is why I love, it's all internal. And the more
yeah.
that shifts inside, the more healing we can bring in there and just really sit in a place where it's uncomfortable, but then still realizing we are in a body, we have a nervous system. Some of the things I did, I'm surprised that I didn't, like I would completely fry myself with some of the things I did because I went too
Mm,
hard and I wasn't aware enough of my nervous system and that it was too much all at once. But then I learned to integrate a bit more, have a bit more time and space, and I don't need to do those crazy things anymore. I live very different. I live slowly. I choose a
mm,
peaceful life. Like, my home is my sanctuary. I do
mm,
life on my terms. I don't have a normal life like what people would call normal. I like to live outside of the box and create. I'm the creator. I deeply believe that. And so if I have
Mm.
possibility and curiosity, it always links to change.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
something's not working, I want to know about it so I can align to the highest possible version of myself, because that allows me to see other people more deeply. So the thing that I probably didn't like doing is the thing that I do most of now, and I do it really well. And so
Mm.
any change always leads to healing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there is definitely that embracing of fear.
Mm.
I also just wanted to really touch on it and really get your perspective, your advice, and that internal intuition and connection in this moment, if that's all right, Jessie, of
Mm.
when we experience trauma and we have gone through these harder times. I'm sorry, I should have silenced that. When we have been through these harder times, there are really these trust factors that really get impeded and impacted, where we find it very, very difficult to trust again, and very, very difficult to take leaps. And change can bring extreme fear when we come from a place of trauma, because now we work so hard in recovery to make ourselves feel safe and to be safe.
Mm.
How do you maneuver for yourself, if you were to give advice to someone in this moment, myself included? Um, how do you maneuver taking active steps in courage and also being able to remain safe to a degree that it's not going to re-traumatize or re-trigger?
Mm. Yeah, I love that question so much. I'm so glad you actually brought that up. There is a lot of rest that comes with change.
Mm,
Resting, rewiring, recalibrating the nervous system. Um, I never thought I'd rest so much in my life. I never knew how to rest, but
yeah.
it's
Mm,
definitely part of it, grounding and resting. But the thing is that we can't wake up tomorrow and it be different. And
yeah.
the truth, if we look at there's a potential that we have a really big healing, and a lot of it might, subside, or we realize a lot all at once. It's, a big awakening. But the reality is that we're always going to be triggered. You can't
Mm,
be a human in this world with no triggers, or,
mm,
no chance of being re-traumatized. It's how you go through that. So for me, it was a lot of reestablishing, like, what is safety, which always changes when I learn more, when I know my needs a little better, when I set boundaries around me, especially energetically, that,
mm,
there's even energy exchange, that there's respect, that there's loyalty. I'm a person that needs to really trust the people that I'm around, like, close people. Otherwise, I
mm.
can't open to them, and they will feel
Yes.
the disconnect. They'll feel the wall. But other than that, if I'm like speaking now, I'm open and vulnerable because I
Mm,
feel that purpose, and I'm using that energy and using my voice because I feel that's part of these learnings. But yeah, get me in intimate settings and close to people, I can
mm.
be a very different human. And so
Yeah.
in comes like attached, fearful, avoidant. I really had that, and I'm working on that, parts of that still. But then I realized some of me has just been around the wrong people.
That's
It's
right.
just getting clearer. So the more I evolve myself, the more I'm aware. But I'm still extremely hard on myself, which
Yeah,
is
me
something
too.
I'm really working on. To
Mm.
this vulnerability that I'm living at the next level requires more softness, because
You
I
know,
can't
I
be and vulnerable.
Yes, yes. So,
Yeah.
and it's funny that you keep leading back to softness, because, and it's funny, every time you say softness, in the back of my mind, I want to say to you, so how do we keep enhancing and keep bringing back softness? Because this can be very difficult when you have been a survivor and when you come out, a survivor. And this is why I say, um, tribulation to triumph, or trauma to triumph, because that is survival. And so it can be very difficult to put that hard ass demeanor sort of to the side, and embrace
Yeah.
the softness, Jessie.
Yeah, so there's a part of me that is extremely strong and resilient, and she knows when to close. That part of me, she knows when she wants to come in and protect me. But if I'm to be self-led, I can feel the quality of that emerging, and then I can actually sometimes reorient myself to the moment, and then choose from self rather than that part of me. How can I navigate this situation from the highest part of me? And to catch that is it's a lot. That's been a lot of meditation, a lot of parts work, a lot of experience to be able to catch my triggers like this. But one will still get me from every now and then. I still find my self talk really critical, which then I catch it, and I try and choose again. And when we're rewiring our brain, our bodies are tired, things, our hormones might go out of whack. There's all these things that happen. Like, it's not, people do see me now and they don't even know what's happened to me. They just think I'm a healthy, vibrant, I've lived this beautiful life. But it's every choice. It's mostly daily choices, and preventing and really knowing what I need, because that was something that was never allowed. I didn't, you can't have needs. You can't ask for
Yeah.
what you want. It's not safe. And so it's still reestablishing that all these years later. There's still, and there's still more work to be done. I don't think it ever stops.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't believe it ever does either.
Mm.
Jessie, look, we've got just under 5 minutes left. So in this remaining time, firstly, I want to thank you so much for coming and doing this with me.
Oh, you're
I
so
very,
welcome.
very much admire your person, and I feel since I've met you, I've always really admired who you are. I just wanted to leave this space tonight, and just ask if you would please just share, for anyone who has been through something similar, going through something similar, what would be something that you would say to them in this moment? Um, and then following on from that, if anyone wanted to get in contact with you, so there are two parts to this, if that's okay. If anyone wanted to get in contact with you, do you mind just sharing what you do? I've been in a retreat with you. If you just want to tell us a little bit about what that entails, working with you, and the things that you delve into.
Okay. So I'll actually want to read from my book,
Yes.
Open, so you can get that online. But there's a
Yes.
thing you might never.
Do you mind sharing the link? Sorry,
Yeah.
after this, do you mind just
I
putting in the
will.
link to where we
Yes.
get the book? Because I want to get it myself. Yeah. So sorry, carry
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
So there's a part in this book that I actually flicked through today, and I was like, oh, I'm going to read this out. So it says here,
Beautiful.
if by any chance you're on the edge of readiness and you're ready to receive this message, you are worthy of unconditional love, and you are worthy of having your needs met. It is okay to ask for help, just be careful who you reach out to. Make sure they are safe, and make sure they won't reinforce your story. The blame keeps you stuck, so choose you and slowly begin to let go of what's known. Imagine the unimaginable for yourself. Freedom can be yours. Nothing you need is outside of yourself, so lean in and find you. Find your inner voice and truth. It is possible. Focus on one step at a time, one day at a time. Everything is going to be okay.
I've got tingles. That's really beautiful.
That's what I wish that,
Yeah.
I heard. But, we won't hear it until we're ready to hear it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just quickly, you facilitate. Yeah.
Yes,
You are awakening facilitator yet? Tell us a little bit about that
yes,
now.
yes. So I mentor people online and in person. I sometimes write blogs. I have a blog on my website, and I get published in some magazines and the CPTSD Foundation. So you can find my website, jessiemoss.com. I'm starting to do a bit more public speaking, and so if anyone wants me to share my story or how to navigate through DV to come out the other side, speaking. And there's so many things that I do. I do sound healings, I do yoga, anything that goes, towards healing, retreats.
Yes.
There's so many things, but you can find it all on my website, sometimes online meditations and things like that as well.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
for any viewers that watch this now or afterwards catch the replay, Jessie, if you don't mind just putting those links underneath on Out of the Fog, the Trauma Networking site, underneath our live tonight, and just also the link to your book, please. That would be so much appreciated. I so appreciate you coming on. I was looking forward to this all week. I really, really was. It's been great, and you always wish that you had more time, right, to delve into things. But if we ever have any other topics that come up, or if anyone would ever like to know anything more about something, reach out to us. I'm sure that Jessie wouldn't mind coming back onto the show if you want to reach out to her yourself. She's been more than willing, and she's someone who I really, really highly recommend connecting with. So thank you so much, Jessie, for your time tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing as well.
Thanks, Jessie. That's much appreciated. You're going to have a lovely night.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye, lovely.
Thanks, Jessie.